Hello and welcome to the In a Nutshell podcast with myself, Andrew Miles Davis, and my co-host, Chris Branch. Now, this is the 10-minute daily podcast where we take out all of the techie talk around generative AI and focus on what the everyday person, content creator, and marketer wants to hear. Now, we've only got 10 minutes, so we can only focus on one particular subject. And today, we're going to talk about a subject that I would say concerns most people when it comes to AI, and that is to do with jobs. Will AI take our jobs? Or as the saying goes, AI won't replace your jobs. People who use AI will replace your jobs. So what we want to do is we want to talk about this because there was an article, I saw this on the BBC website, and it was saying that Derby City Council is to save £200,000 through job losses due to AI. Now, obviously, when it comes to news, there's always the headline that makes people say, wow, hold on a minute, this is concerning. But when you start digging deeper, it addresses something that we spoke about on a couple of episodes before, and that is where we believe the state of AI when it comes to jobs is right now. So I'll just quickly talk about a couple of things and what's happening, and then I'll jump into you, Chris. But essentially, it's saying a city council says it will save £200,000 due to losing 4 jobs because of AI. Now, the council's chief executive said out of 3,000 people workforce, only 4 jobs will be affected. So when he puts it in that context, you kind of think to yourself, well, actually, like obviously from the big headline, you're thinking half the workforce is going, but actually it's only 4 people out of 3,000 that it's going to affect. So this Conservative councillor Michael Holmes said he was concerned about more possible future job losses due to AI. So there's almost like the council saying it's only 4 jobs, but then the government is saying, well, that's the start of things. What's your thoughts on this, Chris?
Yeah, like you said, the headlines, I wonder how many people read the headline versus the actual article. That's the issue with headlines, isn't it? Is that people then go and say, oh my God, AI's taking all the jobs, except you figure out it's only 4 out of, 3,000 or something?
3,000, yeah.
And then you're like, okay, well, naturally, there are already in most businesses of above 1,000 people, ideal things that AI can do. And they're not very big, like they are very small roles, and you'd need to have 1,000+ size company in order to probably have one of these roles, like an admin or something like this, but bingo, AI can solve that for you, and naturally it fits into the pie. Where it's harder is in a size company of 10 or 15 or something like this, and often it's working as a tool with you as opposed to being an entirely new staff member or something like this. But yeah, it is just a thing of future to come, actually. 4 jobs, then 40 jobs, might be 400 jobs. It's hard to hear. It is hard to hear for people doing those job roles, honestly. But hopefully in other, industries, I'm sure there will be new job roles created that may be more enticing than the admin job that you were doing before, but it's change, and that's hard for people.
Yeah, I don't know as well that, because obviously when it comes to redundancies, I don't know if you've ever been made redundant, but I've been made redundant before. And I remember going through the process, but this was 15 years ago. I remember going through the process, and the first thing they have to do is to make sure that no one else can do your job. Like they're not just firing you. They have to be a reason why they're making you redundant, because that job role is no longer available. But that's usually with a person.
Right.
Saying, okay, no person can do that. But once you start bringing in technology, I don't know how, again, I don't know much about the law and legislations and how it works. So this is, if you're working in HR, you will know this more than me. But if it's AI, essentially, how does that work? What's your compensation? Like, could they get sued? Because essentially what they're saying is, we're going to get robots to take over your job. So because of that, we don't need you anymore. Is that a reason to get rid of someone from a not a logistic, from a legal standpoint?
Well, that's a really great question. And I think it's one of the answers that people have been seeking, i.e., I've heard certain word, and it's just talk for now. It's nothing serious that's been implemented by a company, but that similar to a carbon tax, there should be an AI tax. I.e., if a company decides to introduce AI to replace human jobs, there should be a tax on that, and that tax should go to a universal basic income to help support those that have had redundancies. Now, it's not good because obviously you need the motivation of actually having a job, and you still have all of that sorrow of losing your job to a robot and stuff like that. But at least you're monetarily compensated that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's something, and I think what's going to happen is if governments don't introduce an AI tax to companies, they're going to go crazy with this, and the only thing that will stop them and cap them from thinking about replacing humans is if there's maybe a 20% AI tax in order to do that.
Yeah. But the thing is, one reason that I think was going to be quite interesting, connected to do with the AI tax, is, and we spoke about this before, the cost of getting somebody replaced by AI is actually quite a lot. So, one, it'd be interesting to see how well they did their figures, like this council, because from what we've been reading, what we've been hearing, it's not a straightforward, right, this person's on 50,000, let's pay £20 a month for Chat GPT and that's going to save that. Like, I don't think it's as straightforward as that.
Definitely
not. It'll be interesting to kind of see how they've kind of calculated the savings of that. Because if there is an AI tax, then actually I would say more people would, because it will be the cost of putting AI to replace someone, which is a lot. Now I have to pay a tax on that, which is even more. So that's going to be quite interesting to see as well.
Exactly. It's whenever, because all companies are trying to survive and thrive in a capitalist society, they're looking at their profit margins and their, money coming in, money coming out, cash flow, all of these resources. Now, if it was like, as you said, 200 grand in order to set up an AI staff member, and that will pay itself off over the next 10 years, but electricity costs might go up and all of this other stuff, like it's a lot bigger of a gamble, versus, this is going to pay itself off within like 3 months, in which case it's not a long-term gamble at all. It's literally a no-brainer. So then the government can decide these things, on behalf of companies and say, look, you're going to have to take a bigger gamble, because otherwise we're going to tax you, there's got to be, because if it just makes total sense, it's going to happen. Companies are ruthless sometimes, and owners are having to squeeze more money out in order to stay profitable and stay alive. Otherwise the whole company might collapse. So there's lots of companies after the pandemic have been through that, sadly.
Yeah, exactly. But what I thought also was interesting when you talk about different companies going through it is that one of the first companies that's taken that jump is the council.
Yeah.
It's usually when it comes to tech, it's not the council that will be the first one, or a public funded company. It's usually like obviously a company from the private sector.
But in a way, that is a good way, because it's our money. It's the public's taxpayer money, and therefore it should be prioritized about saving that rather than massive profits from massive companies with millions of hedge funds that have got loads to lose.
But I also then think, because it's our money, then I can see a lot of people saying, why are you spending our money on this? And
right,
technology, people's jobs are being lost. And then
you can't win, can you?
Yeah, and then it's going to go into the welfare. And then that means that's our money paying. Like, I can see that argument now coming into it. In fact, it's a good point. There's obviously, like with everything, there's pluses and minuses of this. But I think it's really interesting to kind of see. And this is an area that we are paying close attention to, and that is to do with jobs and how it's affecting jobs. Is it going to be like a lot of jobs being lost? Is it, and this is what we're really hoping, that it's not so much jobs are being lost, it's just old jobs are being lost, but we can retrain you and there's new jobs, because both of us kind of grew up in the digital age where pretty much most of our jobs were completely new, or at least didn't exist like a few years before we got those jobs. And maybe that's the way it's going to go. But Derby Council, I'll definitely be keeping an eye on you. But it'd be interesting to kind of see what areas as well, because they didn't say what areas what that's been replaced.
That would have been a lot more useful, wouldn't it? Like, oh, it's HR or admin roles, and it's this specific technology that's overtaking it. And then we could have broken it down a lot better. But as you said, when it comes to jobs, then in a nutshell for this episode, the sad part about it is we can only ever talk about the loss and not what's going to be created, because we have no idea. You know, if you'd have said to someone 2 years before the internet launched, what sort of jobs will be created because of the internet? I don't think they would have predicted any of the job roles I've ever done. You know, digital marketing manager, PPC, SEO, content marketing, social media. None of that would have been obvious from the launch of the internet. So the same is true with AI.